Welcome to episode 128 of Tech Sales Insights. Really excited to have Steve Layne from Red Vector today. Steve, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Randy. Pleasure to
Excellent.
be here.
All right, awesome to have you. And Glenn must be hanging out on the beach?
No, Glenn doesn't get to go to the beach. Glenn is out trying to make some numbers for us. Glenn, he is hard at work in Manhattan carrying a bag around today.
All right, great job, Glenn. Sounds like a big deal that we can't talk about publicly, but very exciting. Anyway, so Steve is the co-founder, chairman, and CEO of a cool earlier stage security company called Red Vector. So you'll be hearing more about that. Our title topic is getting to 10 million ARR in very early markets. So certainly a lot of people fighting away there in some of these early companies. And with this economy, certainly has been a much more of a dogfight. So look forward to hearing some of those insights. And we're sponsored today by Fullcast.io, who is the go-to-market planning sponsor of Sales Community. They've got a cool integrated planning platform to help you boost sales productivity, help distribute quotas and targets, territory planning. So really help automate some of those key kind of RevOps functional areas and things that you want to do. So Fullcast, thank you. And to those that are Sales Community members, thank you as well. If you're not, Tucker will put a free link in. You can go to salescommunity.com/springfree and you get a free membership there. So by way of introduction, Steve and I really don't know each other. Full disclosure, I'm a small investor in the company and very excited to hear it's going well. So I won't talk about the specific numbers, but that is great. Steve lives in the Philly area, more specifically Valley Forge. Besides work and family, he's into outdoor sports, hunting and fishing. And real passion is just like starting companies is starting vegetable gardens. And that sounds really exciting. And very passionate about his kids and especially Chris and Andrew that had just done the Tough Mudder, which no way I could do it. I don't know about you, but very, very cool that they did that.
Thank you. Yes. And I mean, look, not just Chris and Andrew, I have 6. So a huge shout out to all of them. Interestingly enough, they're all in sales. So they all, I guess, what did they say? The nut doesn't fall far from the tree. So yeah, very, very proud of them all.
Excellent. Good. Off to offline. You can give me their addresses. I'll send you my book that came out pretty good. Obviously, I'm biased. And Tucker, maybe throw the book link on there as well if anybody's interested. I've got some great content in it. 90 CRO friends have some great tips and tricks as well. So jumping into the questions here, maybe talk about, it's always cool to talk about people's first job after college.
Well, let's talk about the job right sort of while I was in college that led to the first job out of college. Right. While I went to George Mason University outside of Washington, D.C., and I worked full-time and I went to school full-time. And my job was I was a car salesman. I worked at a Volkswagen dealership in Arlington, Virginia. And so I sold Volkswagens, new and used Volkswagens. And really, that's where I, in large measure, learned how to sell, right? And learn, sort of the ways and means of what it took to close a deal, if you will. And so after college, I couldn't be a car salesman. I went to, college. I had a degree in marketing. And so I had to go get a marketing job somewhere. So I went to work for Volkswagen, Porsche, Audi in their mid-Atlantic region as a marketing analyst. And it was a fantastic experience because I worked with 70 dealerships in a 5-state region. And I also got to work with their ad agency, Doyle, Dane, and Bernbach, famous New York Madison Avenue ad agency, where I was very early on in my career. I was schooled in something called the psychographics of the automobile purchaser, which has served me extremely well in my sales career in terms of understanding the psychology of why people buy and why they buy certain things. And so, yeah, that was out of college.
Wow, very cool. So on that, any maybe one or two tips or insights that you used with that experience into that correlates over to tech and what you're doing now?
Well, one of the things is, so if you're familiar with, like, for instance, the Myers-Briggs test, right? Sort of a psychographic analysis of, 16 different, types of styles or personas. I could just ask somebody what kind of car they drove. And then I'd ask them about some of the options or features on the car. And that could help me immediately form a personality profile or persona of that person. I mean, very much similar. What is the name of the company that you're involved in and sponsor? Is it get a profile on somebody from LinkedIn?
Yeah. Humantic AI.
Yeah. Exactly. Great product, by the way. And so, that's done through AI right now. I would do that by asking somebody what kind of car they drove: 2-door, 4-door, automatic transmission, manual transmission, leather seats, pleather seats, what kind of radio did you have in the car? And I pretty much could tell who I was dealing with.
Wow, very cool. And then maybe quickly talk about your career from there, including a long time at Capgemini.
Well, so, I was on a career trajectory, all planned out for me, all by the Germans. On my 3rd anniversary, the head of HR brings me in for my annual review, takes out a ruler, has this little 30-year timeline, clicks off year 3. And, this guy, I'll never forget him, Eric Schmidt, in his German accent, said, "Steve, just keep your nose clean. And, in 2 years, you'll get to be an assistant regional parts manager for West Virginia." I was like, well, hold on a second. I mean, no, I want to be at the corner office like in 2 or 3 years, right? I want to be the region general manager, vice president. And the guy looked at me incredulously like, no, your whole career's already been planned out. All you have to do is just show up for work. That's not for me. If I wanted to do that, I would have, joined the government or the military or some more structured environment. So I literally went to the library. That's what you did in those days, right? There was no internet to look for things. You went to the library and I researched, industries in the future. And I read a fantastic article about the convergence of telecommunications and computing in the early 80s. And so I went on a hunt to find a job in telecommunications and computing and wound up working for a company that was based out in New Jersey called GraphNet, graphic scanning, that was at the forefront of the deregulation of telecommunications. Not telephone, not voice, telex. If you remember way back, you're old enough to remember telex.
You get orders on it. Yeah.
That's right. You used to get orders on telex. It preceded facsimile. It preceded the fax machine, right? And so I went to work as a salesperson for this company called GraphNet, selling basically alternative telex services, mainly to Fortune 1000 type companies. And then, just to carry on with the interesting story, one of my customers was IBM. They had a location in Boca Raton, Florida, and their volume went from about $1,000 a month to $30,000 a month. So I immediately flew down there to find out what they were doing so I could maybe replicate it. And a guy takes me in the back and said, "Well, we're making this new IBM computer. It's called the 5150. Everything at IBM in those days had a number, right?" He goes, "But we're not going to call it the 5150. We're going to call it the PC, the personal computer." And he showed me this computer and he said, "Now what's going to be so cool about this is that other people other than IBM will be able to write programs for it." And so it was like, wow, the light bulb went off in my head. And it was like, I could turn this computer into a telex machine. And in those days, telex machines sold for $20,000. So I could buy an IBM computer, put some software in it that emulated what a telex machine did, and sell it for $10,000. And so my brother and I, my brother was a programmer. He was just coming out of college with a degree in computer programming. He wrote the software. I sold it. And then very quickly, that sort of evolved into electronic mail. And we sold that first company in 1987 to a division of GTE, General Telephone and Electronics, that became part of Sprint. So, yeah.
Awesome. And then maybe kind of quickly go through from there.
Habitual entrepreneur. I mean, I've been a part of 7 startups. This particular journey I'm on started in 2015 at Lockheed Martin. Some friends of mine called and said, "Steve, great opportunity to come in and help us run or build a startup under the umbrella of Lockheed Martin." they were being called upon, as were many other defense contractors in that 2013, 14, 15 timeframe, to immediately get some of their cybersecurity capabilities out into the marketplace, primarily critical infrastructure. So they started up a division that was called Lockheed Martin Commercial Cyber. They acquired a company up near Boston and Foxborough, Industrial Defender, integrated that company in, and we basically built this company from zero to about $130 million in less than 2 years. It was just an unbelievably excellent, experience. Some of the best people I've ever worked for in my career. But then Lockheed spun us out. We got caught up in a big divestiture of a much larger unit that we reported into, went to another government contractor called Leidos, based in Reston, Virginia. Leidos only kept us for 2 years because they are a government contractor. They didn't want to have any commercial risk exposure. So they hired a banker, put us out for sale, and Capgemini bought us out of Paris.
Awesome. So you go small company to then end up big company because of that acquisition, had a great run at Capgemini. And then kind of what was the process in terms of going through to think of starting Red Vector?
So we had a piece of technology that we originally developed at Lockheed Martin to do insider threat analytics, insider threat detection. This was all sort of around the Eric Snowden, post-Snowden timeframe. And so it was an approach to utilize, Lockheed Martin needed this for their own internal corporate use, right? They're building the F-35, they're building F-22s. They were a target of espionage by, big time nation state actors, right? And so they needed a way to find, potentially, embedded spies within the organization. So they developed this software platform that it didn't just look at cyber related data. It also looked at other behavioral indicators of human behavior. So HR information, scanning for open source public records like arrest warrants or, criminal charges. It brought it all into a big data lake, ran a lot of interesting machine learning algorithms on it, and then produced risk scores so that corporate security could go and try to mitigate in advance of an event happening, right? It's like, look, Steve, we see these things happening, your risk score is going on, what's happening, right? Because in many cases, there's life stressors, financial issues, family issues, bad work environment issues, lack of training that are precursors to ultimately these, in many cases, catastrophic events like sabotage, workplace violence, fraud, theft. And so this piece of technology was a fantastic piece of technology. We immediately sold it to 8 major organizations. Then we got caught up in sort of a freeze by being spun out to this other company. They didn't want to invest in anything, and they were services businesses. They weren't product companies. So Capgemini, really a service-oriented company, didn't know what to do with some of these software assets. And so myself and a few others, Glenn, my co-founder, he was not at Capgemini at the time, but he was my AI expert. He was at Data Robot, and he was also my risk modeling expert because he had spent 14 years at Moody's Analytics. So that convergence of analytics and AI, he had the handle on. And so I left and we acquired the software, we acquired the customers, and off we went to the races. So that was a little over a year and a half ago.
Awesome. So then you kind of are, not that you didn't have any work left to do, but you kind of, it's a startup, but you kind of started on the 50-yard line because you already had a product, you already had product market fit, you already had customers.
Correct.
So it's kind of cheating, but it's great.
Oh, come on.
Great way to do it, right? It makes so much sense for sure.
You make it sound so easy, right? Maybe I don't even need salespeople. We'll just put an order form on the web and people can just buy it.
There you go.
It's not that easy.
I think a little bit more of a heavy lift. So speaking of which, then kind of what is your go-to-market? How do you sell?
So we are account specific, direct, account targeted focused, right? So we're very, very deterministic in terms of who we sell this to and how we sell it to them. And quite honestly, in some cases, I tease, the guys a lot in that, we're not really selling. We're just helping people buy this, right? Our typical customer, our ideal customer profile is in most cases a chief security officer, head of risk. Certainly the chief information security officer, the CISO, has a major, vote or say in this. The CIO has a major vote and say in this. General counsel does, but it's that corporate security function with a lot of HR assistance as well, because ideally the outcome that we produce is this mitigating capability in advance. So if an employee assistance program can help this employee get some help before they go forward, and either intentionally or unintentionally, in many cases it's accidental, but it can lead to significant repercussions. So that's that. So anyway, back to directly answer your question, we're focused right now on commercial and the U.S. government. I would say it's about 50-50. When you tell some people that, as a startup, you're focused on the U.S. government, they look at you like you're crazy because of the long sales cycles, the bureaucracy, and what it takes. But it is the one market that has a mandate to do this. In 2016, President Obama issued a presidential order that all government agencies must have what is called an insider threat hub. So defense, intelligence, civil, all of them have been doing this capability of looking for insider threats. The problem is they do it manually. It's not automated. And so what our solution does is automates this, and it dramatically optimizes and increases the efficacy of their programs. So the U.S. government, market A, market one. The other market is critical infrastructure, as defined by the Department of Homeland Security. So DHS has defined 16 sectors as critical to our nation's sustainability: financial services, transportation, energy, utility, critical manufacturing. So the list goes on. We're focused right now on about 6 or 7 of those agencies, and we're even then more focused on the more mature organizations that are actively out, trying to, protect both their employees and their critical assets.
Wow. So not only did you start with product market fit and customers and already value proposition, on top of that, your offering is actually a mandate by the government and by these different verticals.
That's correct.
That's pretty good.
Well,
now there must be, for what you do, I mean, there's got to be a lot of competition, right?
Well, no. I mean, well, let's talk about competition. There's always competition. Years ago, somebody told me, they said, "Look, Steve, the weather is our competition in sales, right? If it's raining today, nobody's going to come out and buy cars, right? That's your competition." So, so there is competition. I mean, first and foremost, if you were to Google insider threat, insider risk, you're going to find, 30, 40 companies out there, all that have this in their title. Exactly. But it's only in the context of cybersecurity, and it's only looking at things sort of in the moment. I like to refer to these solutions, DLP, UEBA solutions, that's what they're called, as smoke detectors. They're fire alarms, right? They're lightning detectors. They're going to tell you that, lightning is striking, that there's a problem happening right now. We're a weather forecasting system, right? Just like the weather agencies build models, the North American model, the European model. What we do is bring in all of this data, allow analysts to build models like a sabotage model or a data exfiltration model, and then see the risk starting to increase over time. And as you see these indicators of risk increasing, you try to get what they call left of boom, or in the financial world, left of theft, right? You try to mitigate the problem. And so that's the real benefit of our approach and our solution. That is the new era, or the new wave of this, is to try to be predictive as opposed to reactive. So the competition is really are really these more reactive type of solutions, which work, but look, by the time it goes off, it's too late. I mean, the house is already on fire, right? I'll tell you 3 weeks in advance that someone's in the basement with matches, next to some oily rags. Yeah. Let's go get that guy out of the basement and, throw away the oily rags.
And you also have some impressive partners as well. You're working with Microsoft and others.
We are. Microsoft, found us, quite frankly, a little over a year ago. There's a major trend happening in the world of cybersecurity called ZTA, Zero Trust Architecture. Again, another federally driven mandate. So President Biden, a year and a half ago, issued a mandate that said all government agencies have to refactor their IT infrastructure to support what's called ZTA, Zero Trust Architecture. In the simplest of terms, layman's terms, it says trust nothing, but trust nothing, verify it every step of the way, right? So that my cell phone, when I'm at home on a trusted network, it has a score of 10. It's totally trustable. Maybe on a public Wi-Fi, it's a 1 or a 2, right? And so there's some things I should be able to get to, some things I shouldn't be able to get to. To do that, you need to have confidence scores, trust scores, risk scores, right? Call it whatever you want to call it. Those scores have to come from somewhere. That's what we do. We produce risk scores and then feed them back to platforms like Microsoft or Google or Amazon. So Microsoft was the first one up to the plate because they're making probably the largest investment of anybody in the industry, and they're quite advanced in terms of what they do. So that's our first partner, but we have a number of others that we're starting to work with as well.
Wow, amazing. So I would think some of the bigger security companies, certainly must be looking at you to partner with or probably even acquire, right?
Yes. I mean, it's everything's for sale, right? At the right price at the right time. And I mean, if you were to handicap Red Vector, based on my past performance, everything typically winds up in an acquisition at the end of the day. I did have a train wreck or two along the way, but nobody died. It was all okay. But yeah, no, I mean, I think what look, at the end of the day, this product has wide, appeal, wide, adaptability across industries, across the globe, right? And no matter how much money, if I was to go out and try to raise today, I'm not going to build a 20,000, 25,000 person sales organization, right? Those organizations exist out there. So the question becomes sell with, sell to, sell through, and then, how important is what we have to somebody's, strategy, quite frankly.
Yeah. So from those train wreck experiences, any kind of 1 or 2 takeaways or lessons learned?
I mean, it's part of this concept that, I'm going to talk about here in a second with respects to market annealing, right? It's really, really easy. And I think all entrepreneurs do this. We get in front of our headlights, right? We're all optimists. We're very optimistic, right? I mean, we think everything's going to close in 2 weeks, 2 months, when it's really going to take 2 years or what have you. And so, the one lesson that, I try to enforce upon myself now today is when I look at the forecast, take everything, divide it by 2, and then multiply it by like 0.1. And then you might get to sort of, truth in terms of, of cash flow and where things are going to come in. That's number one. And I guess number 2, I mean, markets change, right? I mean, what's here today could be gone tomorrow. And
right.
So, just look at where we are, like all of a sudden out of the middle of nowhere, AI has been around for freaking 10 years, right? I mean, I think those of us that have been involved in AI, there's no surprise. Well, for some reason, and okay, maybe it was ChatGPT and it's kind of a cool, magical little thing, right? And, maybe that's what it took to get people going. But now all of a sudden, like CNBC, all they talk about is AI, right? But what is it going to be next week or next month? And so, you've just, don't get fully invested in, flavor of the month.
Yep, totally. So I'm talking about the title topic, getting to 10 million ARR in very early markets. So I would imagine founder-led sales is a big piece.
That is the essence of this. So first of all, there's a wonderful, and we'll put a link. I'll go try to find it. I'm sorry, I should have come with the link, but you can look for this or Google it. It was an article or a blog post that was written by 2 venture capitalists with Andreessen Horowitz, Martin Casado and Peter Levine. And they put it out about 2 or 3 months ago called Market Annealing, getting to 10 million in ARR in these early markets. And so they discuss, or they use the analysis or comparison to this process in metallurgy called annealing. It's where you take two metals and you heat them up and you get them sort of, bound together so that they ultimately form, this one piece of metal, right? It's sort of, welding on steroids or soldering on steroids. So there's this process you have to go through to get these two separate things to sort of join. So what I've come to learn in these early stage companies is that is sort of part of that is the role of the CEO. That's the role of the founding team, is to go through this process of taking, your ideas, your intellectual property, your product, and working with the market to ultimately form what becomes both the market and the company. And, now that we've moved to a different model in terms of how we measure success in terms of ARR versus, perpetual license, sort of the magic milepost is that $10 million number, right? That's what investors will tell you. And, that's what, even as the CEO, you get the company to about 10 million in ARR, maybe you've got 30 to 50 people supporting that, and you've got a real business. The thing's going to run, it's going to be self-sustaining. And so one of the keys to that is the founders have to be the lead salespeople. They don't have to be the only salespeople. You still need account executives. You still need business development executives. You need to sell as a team, right? You need to sell as a unit and work with these early stage customers to help them along the way to mold their, problem sets into outcomes that the product delivers. And that's what I'm calling, or that's what these writers actually, I think, so well described in their piece in terms of how do you do that, right? How do you go to market? How do you not take this money that investors put into your company and just sort of willy-nilly spend it with consultants and ad agencies and marketing firms or what have you, right? In the beginning, it's hand-to-hand combat. You have to work with each, opportunity in each account to get those wins.
Yeah, amazing. And also too, that allows you to kind of tweak the roadmap as well, right? Because you're getting the real-time feedback and then feeding that into the engineering or the product management, product marketing side as well, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. That's the process, because clearly, you go in, you think you know all the answers. I mean, that's part of the entrepreneur, founder, startup sort of thing. Yes, I know what's going to be best, but you also have to train yourself to shut the hell up and listen to the customers, right? I think it should be green, 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 but it's really, imperative that you and that founding team go in and, you can try to, in essence, sell green, but then stop and listen why they kind of want it to be a little more yellow or red, right? And then you go back and you go, yeah, you know what? That's right. I didn't think about that. I didn't see it through that lens.
Yeah. And then kind of once you kind of get out of the gates, you have some sales, you have product market fit, kind of what are your philosophies in terms of scaling on the sales side?
People. I mean, you're the father of a Division I college athlete, right? I mean, he didn't just walk onto the field one day and say, yeah, I want to play third base or whatever position he plays, right? There's a recruiting process. There's a difference between good talent and great talent, right? You want to look and you have to discipline yourself to only go for the great talent, right? Yep. I mean, it's hard. It takes time. There's that desire, and that's why you have to be careful in terms of who you pick as your investors, because some investors want to come in, just hire 20 people. It's an Excel spreadsheet, right? If you hire 20 people, give them $1 million quota, it's a $20 million number. We're going to cut it in half. Okay, you've got to do 10 million this year, right? And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way, right? Let me get two great business development executives that can do 5 million apiece, right?
And you have to make sure they have the kind of right chops for the startup environment as well, right? Because if I take like a Glenn, if I remember right, I think he was at Moody's a long time, big company, Data Robot, good sized company, but then now coming in for something that's really small, if you're not kind of used to doing that type of work where you got to, do everything, right? There's no resources. That's a whole different world, right?
Well, in Glenn's case, he did. I mean, I think he got to Data Robot when they were maybe 100 people. They weren't that big. They were still a startup, right? Yeah. I mean, as I like to say, as part of the questioning process, it's like, oh, by the way, you don't mind staying in Motel 6 or the Best Western, do you? Right? You don't mind sharing a room with me. If we're going to go out on this sales call to St. Louis, we're going to stay at the Best Western and share a room. You're okay with that, right? Now, we don't do that, but you say that to someone that's come from that world, it's like, no, excuse me, I'm Platinum Plus with Marriott or Hyatt, and I only stay on the concierge level. You must be crazy, right? And it's like, yeah, I'm not so crazy, but yeah, thanks a lot. Good luck, right? So no, there are those folks that that are comfortable with that, with a more austere environment, I guess is one way to describe it in the beginning. Ultimately, things pick up and, continue to, return to a normal situation. But,
but then their side is to go reason to do it. You have obviously it's a great environment, you're hands-on, you get to see everything, but with that risk then comes reward, assuming it works out, correct?
That's right. And so, you find people that, and it's not just the individual, because people have, they have families, they have significant others, right? And so those families and significant others have to pay the price as well, have to be willing to pay the price up front, right? To know that, maybe we're not eating out as much in the beginning here, right? Yeah, maybe we need to put the tennis club, golf club membership on hold for a year or so, right? I mean, there's a lot of sacrifice, irregardless of what the company is in the beginning, because again, you have to hold on to those dollars until the dollars are flowing in. You got to try to keep them from going out as well.
Yeah, big time. And then not just on the sales side, but then also you kind of the first domino is you need demand gen, right? You don't want to have sales just completely cold calling. So how important is that kind of demand gen function? And do you consider kind of outsourcing that or kind of having it inside?
Yeah, no, it's got to be inside. That's one of the rules of this annealing process. You cannot entrust that because you're still figuring it out, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, forget about the cost of outsourcing it to somebody else. If I hand it to somebody else, quite frankly, they're not going to know the questions to ask. They're not going to be able to listen as acutely as we are, the true subject matter experts. And it's those early conversations, it's those early A/B testing that you do with whatever kind of advertising, that you are doing, right? It's and again, this has always been kind of a hallmark of my career in doing these early stage businesses. Event-based marketing is critical, right? Because if you're selling to elephants, go to the big watering hole where they're at. I mean, I'm here today outside of Washington, D.C. at National Harbor at the Gartner Security Conference. Why? Because there's 5,000, security executives that are here attending this conference, and then there's 1,000 of the key partners that we want to be able to deal with. And so you come here, you talk to people, you go out to the cocktail parties, you listen to what they have to say, you come back every day with the team, you sort of trade and compare notes and sort of zero in on, yep, that's exactly right. Let's go get that new feature moved up in the priority list because we heard 6 people tell us that they want that new green widget, right?
Awesome. And I should have mentioned before, I got totally sucked in here in a good way, but anybody that wants to ask any questions or make any comments along the way, as always, please feel free. So back on the demand gen, so you said your ideal persona is really that CISO. So
CSO, Chief Security Officer.
Okay, Chief Security Officer. So so those you can kind of list manage pretty well. So ideas and kind of how do you get access to them? Do you do a mix of cold calling and emails and reach outs and tagging LinkedIn and different things like that? Or what have you found most effective?
Two things. I mean, first of all, LinkedIn is a wonderful community environment. I mean, it's sort of where we hang out. I mean, it's the 24/7 showroom. It's the 24/7
There you
trade
go.
show, right? And
Yeah.
so, we find LinkedIn to be highly effective. We have a lot of love for LinkedIn. Number two, given the nature of what we do, it's a relatively small community. Part of the ideal customer profile, many of these chief security officers are former law enforcement or military counterintelligence, defense and intelligence, counter intel people. And so there is a steady stream of fantastic people that retire from public service in their early to mid 50s or so. And so we've been working with some very, very select folks that come from that world that are extremely well connected into those networks. So former FBI, former Secret Service, former, intelligence agency, where their former colleagues, they worked at the agency for 25 years and now they're working for mega company XYZ, right? And so being able to come in with a very, very warm, and genuine introduction is the preferred approach. But then, again, yes, we do cold call. We do, reach out via email. We try to, we try to do our best to get an audience, because we also operate to a principle that I coined this term years ago, AIE, awareness, interest, engagement. I mean, I need to we do from a demand gen perspective. Just understand that red vector's here. We do this type of technology. We solve these sorts of problems. Hopefully somebody gets interested, and then hopefully they say, well, I'd like to learn more. And then that starts to move us towards engagement.
Awesome. And then what about kind of being earlier stage company in terms of your kind of RevOps tech stack? Are there any things, and obviously LinkedIn, but kind of any other kind of tools that you like?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, you've probably heard this, for years and years and years. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it, right? And so again, it's back to the world of sports. It's it's Moneyball, it's statistics. You need to know what you're doing. You need to be able to quantify it. So Salesforce is our system of record, right? That's where and we our RevOps, we have a code name for it internally called switchboard, right? It's like the old switchboard where the operator plugs in all the different plugs. Yeah. So Salesforce is the hub, and then connecting into that is Zoom Info. Connecting into that is HubSpot. Connecting into that is LinkedIn. Connecting into that are other tools that we use to focus on accounts and contacts, right? And then follow the process. We one of the things I didn't mention, I'm a terrible but avid golfer, and so we have a forecasting system, very, very simple. Commit, CTTP, closest to the pin, right? And the question always there, is it a one putt, or you better not three putt it, but even if you do three putt it, the ball can't roll off the green. Best case or potential, that's where it's at, right? And then you put a probability on there so you can get a weighted forecast, so you get a sense of what's going to happen or not. And so Salesforce is Salesforce is perfect for that. But then ultimately, probably the best sales tool of them all for me, as a leader, is Excel, because then I can pull it into Excel and do what I need to do with it. And maybe the adjunct app is PowerPoint. Move the data over to PowerPoint and share it with the team, share it with the investors.
There you go. Awesome. So before we move on, anything else that's top of mind, talking about getting to 10 million AR in early markets?
I mean, that's it's part of the fun of this. It's the daily, it's the daily battle. It's the daily, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat, right? I mean, we, every day, you get the, the positivity and the rewards when people, understand what your solution does. They envision themselves wanting to do it. You go through it. And again, this is very much, I call it kind of almost a community sell. There's not one particular person that buys this.
Yeah.
It requires approvals and understandings across a, range of different, personas and folks, which is fun because you get to meet these people that are in these different roles in these different businesses and industries. But yet they all share, many of the same common problems. So, it's execution. It's back to sports. You got to show up, right? You got to throw the pitches and you got to hit the balls.
Awesome. And it sounded exciting. I think last week you had Rep. Chrissy Houlihan come by and visit.
We did. That was very exciting for us. So our local congressional representative, Representative Houlihan, first of all, she's the senior ranking member, minority member on the House Committee for Intelligence, as well as she is a member on the House Committee for Armed Services. So she's right in the middle of, our DOD and IC marketplace. Extremely, extremely sharp, individual, Stanford degree. She served in the Air Force. She came in and she was, probably more attuned to what we do than some of the top Fortune 10 companies that we deal with. But, as a really, fantastic politician, she understands, the value. We fit all of her key priorities: small entrepreneurial business, national security, health and wellness, veterans. I mean, we make a special point to try to find folks that have served in the services or in public service. And so, she, I believe, is going to be very helpful in helping us sort of navigate the ins and outs of the Washington circuit, so to speak. And we hope to work with others. I mean, I think, we'll be meeting with senators and other Congress people that have an interest in this.
Awesome. Really exciting. That's so great. So maybe last question for you here. What advice would you give your younger self?
Oh my gosh. What advice would I give my younger self? Watch what you eat, watch what you drink, exercise a little bit more, right? Yep. Think twice before you make some of those discretionary purchases. Look, I've been a very, very blessed person. I have, both myself and my family, for the most part, we've had, good health. We've had some adversarial situations pop up, but you deal with them, right? And you take it one day at a time. Probably took me a little bit longer than I would have liked to learn. Just don't look back. You can't look back. It's all you just can't go back. The only direction you can go is forward, right? And so, figure out what you're going to do, tomorrow, next week, next month. Don't worry about what you did last week.
Exactly. Awesome. Great perspectives, and time flies here when you have fun. So some of the links that Tucker has here for those watching. So the Humantech AI, I think that gives you a free week. So it's really cool looking at the personality profiles of those that you're selling to. Also has a cool way to kind of re-swizzle emails to folks based on those personality profiles. You can get the Sales Community, the book I did, and certainly join Sales Community. And special thanks to Fullcast, who's the go-to-market planning sponsor of Sales Community. And next week, Tucker, who's behind the scenes here, he's going to get married on Saturday. So I'm not going to make him work next week. So we're going to do a replay of the John McMahon podcast from, I don't know, so it's a month or so ago. So he's kind of the godfather of MedPick, and certainly had some great perspectives. And then we'll be back live in 2 weeks with Steve Hirsch, who's the CRO of Vertana. And I know that will be great. And we just had Matt chime in and say it was really informative and excellent perspective. So I totally agree, Matt. Thank you for that. So, Steve, you've been awesome. Certainly, selfishly wish you and Glenn the best with Red Vector, but sounds like you got a hot one, and look forward to watching your continued success. And obviously, in any way I can help, look forward to it. So thanks so much. And then Steve, when we cut out, just hang on and we can recap. All right.
That sounds great.
All right. Thanks everybody. Have a great week.